The Afterlife.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of this video series discussing what happens to your body during death until Qiyamah. So far we have discussed 3 of the 4 aspects of our content. Number 1, what happens to the body while it is dying. Number 2, what happens to the body and soul in Barzakh. Number 3, the signs of the Day of Judgment. And lastly, the new aspect of this series which we are going to start today, which is the Day of Judgment. First up on the agenda is discussing the initiative of all the events of the Day of Judgment, which is the blowing of the trumpet. Now, it is mentioned that the people will question whether the prophecy made about the Day of Judgment is true or not. And in the middle of their argument, they will hear a cry, and the cry will seize them in such a way that they will not be able to go back to their families. After the first trumpet is blown, everything will die. Now, what most people don't know is it's not just one trumpet that blows and then everything dies all at once. No, it's not like that. What happens is, Angel Israfil will descend with the command of Allah to the earth. Once Angel Israfil has descended to the earth, he will have a trumpet which has one mouthpiece and 2 tubes. And the distance between this end of the tube and this end is like that of the skies and the earth. What this means is, when he blows the trumpet, the one side will kill all the inhabitants of the earth. They will all pass away. The other side will lead towards the heavens, where all the angels will die from the first heaven, then after a while the second heaven. It just goes higher, until everything is dead, except for, of course, Allah the Almighty and the Ever-Living, and Angel Israfil. And then Allah will say, "O Israfil, die," and he will die. Then the heavens will reel, they will go dizzy, the mountains will fly, which is a way of saying the earth will be replaced by a new one. Now, what is the reason for this? One reason could be that in order to have a sinless earth where no sins have been committed yet, at that time when there will be nobody alive, Allah will create a very loud voice which will ring throughout the earth and the heaven. What will this loud voice say? This voice will say, "Whose is the kingdom on this day?" Nobody will give an answer because everyone is dead. Then he will answer himself, "It is of Allah, the One, the Subduer." You can find this in Surah Al-Ghafir, Surah number 40, verse 16. Now that's the first trumpet. The second trumpet, when after an amount of time has passed, Allah will cause Angel Israfil to come back to life, who will blow the trumpet yet again, causing everything and everyone to come back to life. And thus begins the reckoning of the Day of Judgment. Now that was part 1 of today's video. The next part is a relatively shorter part, but yet a very crucial and important aspect. One may consider it an extension of the second trumpet's blowing. It is the question of the resurrection of the body.
يوم القيامة.
People tend to deny the resurrection of the body mainly because of one thing. How can a body be resurrected when it has been turned into dust? There is a very befitting answer to this. In Surah number 13, verse number 5, as you can see on your screens right now, broadly speaking, there are 4 groups of people. Number 1, the atheists, who completely deny the existence of God and the day of resurrection. Number 2, you have the agnostics, who don't accept nor do they deny both God and the day of resurrection. Number 3, you have the deists, who accept God but declare that there is no day of judgment in their belief. And lastly, you have theists like Muslims and Christians who believe in a day of judgment and believe in a God. Now, these four groups, of course, there must be something which sets the right group away from the other three groups, which are obviously false. Which is the right group? Let us see. For this, I would like to refer to Surah Yasin, Surah number 36, verses 77 to 79. In verse 77, Allah says, "What, does not man see that it is we who created him from sperm? Yet behold, he is an open disputant." Here Allah reminds us of His unlimited power. He created eyes, ears, nose, mouth, skin, all from one single sperm. And yet, ending part of the same verse, Allah talks about the open disputant who clearly says that why should I believe in a day of judgment? Why should I believe in a God? While it is this same God who created him. He uses the same thinking ability that God has provided him with to question God. What is this? In verses 78 and 79, Allah says, "And they argue with us, forgetting they were created, saying, who will give life to decayed bones? Say," meaning say, O Prophet, "they will be revived by the one who produced them for the first time. For he has perfect knowledge of every created being." These two verses refute the doubts people have in the day of resurrection. Allow me to explain and elaborate. So, as I mentioned earlier, one of the arguments is, how can Allah create from dust? He made human beings without any raw material initially. The first time, as Allah says, we created them from nothing but a sperm drop. Now when He has the decayed bones, which He also doesn't need, but He has them, is it truly that hard for Him to create? Yet again, this shows that Allah has powers in an unimaginable level. If people say that how can He make from the dust of bones, that means that what they're saying is, if we can create from raw materials, how can God create from raw materials? That puts God beneath themselves. Na'udhu billah. Now the second argument is a bit longer. If a man is eaten by a cannibal, and the cannibal is eaten by a lion, who is fed upon by the insects after death, how will Allah know where to put each piece or each component of each animal or human? Allah says He is fully cognizant of all things, meaning He knows what belongs to which organism. So if there is a piece of meat in the insect which ate the lion, He knows it is from the first human being who was eaten. Therefore He can create because He does know. Now, if it is established, and of course if you do believe in Qiyamah, it is established, Allah knows all things. If you agree to this, why do you fail to understand that He can create from nothing? And why do you assume that He will not know which part of the insect is from which animal or which organism? And why can't He just place it back there? For He is all knowledgeable and all powerful. Now, that was the group of the atheists. Let us turn to the agnostics' view. Now see, if an agnostic is not just an atheist in disguise, the safest course of action for him is to simply believe in God in the hereafter. Our sixth holy Imam, Imam Jafar as-Sadiq, was once having a conversation with an agnostic. And before the agnostic could say anything, for he was there to question him about his own beliefs, the Imam said, if what you say is true, meaning if there is no God, then there is no difference between you and the other people who believe in God, because there is no punishment. Therefore, you decompose, they decompose. There is no issue there. However, if what they say is true, meaning that if God truly exists, then you are in trouble while they are saved. So that, as we have established, number one, Allah can recreate from dust. Number two, He knows where everything belongs. Number three, if an agnostic is not just an atheist in disguise, the safest course of action for him is to believe in God and the Day of Judgment. Now, to cover atheists is more of a aqaid aspect, which we are not here to discuss today. However, if you are interested, I will leave a link to a book by my grandfather, Allamah Syed Rizvi, called God, an Islamic Perspective. So in today's video, we have discussed 3 or 4 aspects depending on how you categorize them. Number 1, the blowing of the trumpets. Number 2, which may also be considered as a subsection of the first one, is the resurrection of the body. However, I personally do believe that it should be its own category. Number 3, we discussed the last verses of Surah Yasin in order for us to understand better some questions that people put towards the Day of Judgment. And lastly, we discussed the Agnostics' view from the words of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. In the next video, inshallah, we will start discussing mahshar, questioning of the prophets and their ummats, scrolls of the deeds and testimonies of the limbs, and finally the weighing scales. I hope to see you there, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.